Hey everybody, Arby here with Harbinger Games, and we're going to be taking another look at Dota's Underlords here today. Specifically for new players, we're going to be looking at early, mid, and late game considerations. Let's get right to it. Phases of the game. We're going to be talking about three phases: early, mid, and late game. Now, these are rough estimates of the rounds, and there's no hard and fast rule here. And a lot depends upon how you're doing in the game and how your opponents are doing, but just keep these concepts in mind. So, early game is roughly rounds 1 through 10, and you'll be focusing on buying your first initial heroes and potentially maybe leveling once or twice to get more heroes on the board. Mid game, rounds 11 to 19, you're going to be cementing your strategy, seeing what alliances and what luck has given you on the board and what your items help you move towards. Late game, you'll be taking in a lot, you'll be definitely cementing and going forward with a strategy, choosing your alliances and items carefully to minimize your losses and maximize your gains. So let's talk a little bit more about each of these phases. All right, let's talk about early game. All right, so first items that you're going to get, and remember you'll be getting, by the end of round 10, you'll have gotten your chance to choose 4 different items, assuming you win all the NPC rounds. And as I state here, I really don't believe there's any wrong choice. And why is that? Well, the heroes that you have early in the game are often not the heroes that you're going to have mid and late game. So you just don't know what's going to go on there. So, there are better choices sometimes. There's some items that are considered to be stronger or not. Just, basically play the game. Decide what works for you. What's of best benefit to me. Another thing too is don't be afraid to ignore your global buffs that you've chosen. You don't want to get stuck trying to force yourself into playing only heroes because on round 2 I picked that soul-sucking siphon buff and I just got to get warlocks. I got to get warlocks out, so I've got to re-roll and spend gold trying to find warlocks. If it doesn't come, don't be afraid to walk away from that. That's what a lot of the top tier players do. Is that if they choose it, and if it doesn't happen, they walk away from it and they take what the board's given them. So don't you be afraid to do that either. Level your player wisely, or not at all perhaps. Remember, your first 3 levels come free. By the end of round 3, you're already going to be level 3. So between now and the end of this early game around 10, you could be as high as level 6, depending on how you want to spend your gold. There's a lot of theories out there on this, and generally what happens is that you're going to want to level if you find yourself running into some good luck and getting early upgrades to your heroes, or just smashing your opponents. You want to keep that the way to keep your win streak up. So in general, you're going to level yourself between 5 to 6 and 6 to 7, but generally you should be looking to only spend money here at this point because you want to start stockpiling your gold in the middle rounds to earn interest. So be very considerate. Don't level up because you can. Make sure when you're leveling, especially early in the game, that it's going to allow you to add a hero that's really going to make a difference to your board. The first heroes that you're purchasing here, make sure you're taking a look at, listen, do I have an opportunity to get a powerful 3rd tier hero here? Early in the game is a good example that I like to use. It may be more important than trying to match up an alliance. If it fills your only alliance and you haven't got any kind of synergy, you might pass on it. But consider that, just remember that higher tier characters, in general, a tier 3 character is going to beat a tier 1 character when they're both 1 star. They're generally more powerful abilities and more powerful in general. So make sure you're considering that versus just trying to match up your alliances. And also make sure you're aware of the alliances that only require 2 heroes on the board. Some examples are Savage, the Druids, and Knights. Those are all ones you can quickly get some quick advantage on the board by getting some buffs by using those 2 heroes. And lastly here, don't re-roll until you get to be about round 7 or 8. Now this is a pretty solid rule here because you won't have much gold because you're going to be spending most of it purchasing your first heroes. At this point, you shouldn't be spending gold trying to look for matches. You should be just taking the strongest heroes you can take. Some players, I think, would even advocate that you start rolling the store until later, but every rule is meant to be broken. But in general, don't start re-rolling and trying to match up heroes to make upgrades until round 10 or 11. Here, now we've entered the mid-game, and we're really going to be looking to cement our battle plan. In the first 10 rounds, we gathered some heroes, and we've hopefully got an alliance or 2 or 3 working for us here. And now we're really going to start making some decisions based on what we see in the next few rounds coming through the store to try to really push ourselves to have at least 2 to 3 strong alliances 4, especially if you can still keep around some of those 2 alliances. But you definitely want to be cementing things now. And when you're re-rolling with purpose to try to get specific units that will help match that. The more units you need, the better in some senses when you re-roll. Don't spend a lot of time re-rolling just to pick up one individual hero. It can be very difficult. Hero management. Don't be afraid to sell heroes. You just don't want to get into a place where you're going, wow, Axe 2 has been with me. My 2-star Axe has been with me since round 4. He's been a great guy. If he doesn't fit your mix, it's time to jettison. Remember, you're going to get the gold back from him, and you can use that to purchase more units. So if you see someone there that makes sense to move out of him, don't be afraid to do it. Look to be upgrading into higher tiers as much as you can, and that fits your alliances and helps benefit you. Maybe you can't put them in right away, but get them on your bench, because remember, you can level your heroes up on the bench. They don't have to be on the board to level. So start building your bench strength too. And just know that your hero lineup can change dramatically throughout the middle of the game. You may get to a point where you decide that because what you're seeing on the board, you're saying, boy, I'm just not going to be able to make this work. There's a lot of assassin players and I can't play my mages, at least right now, because they just keep getting destroyed and you're struggling with that. So just know that can happen. So, but by the end of mid game, you really need to have yourself cemented, or you're really going to struggle in later rounds because other players will be there and you're going to find it very hard to overcome, and you're going to start taking bigger and bigger losses, losing more and more life. And you may find yourself in the unfortunate situation where your life is so low that you need to burn all your gold away to do whatever you can to damage control and get your board stronger. I had debated putting life as a resource here in the early to mid game, but it certainly comes in late in the early game and early in the mid game. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. That to know that your life is a resource, and losing a round is okay, and losing multiple rounds is okay. And that until you get under 50 life, you really have a lot of freedom to do what you want. You don't want to lose it willy-nilly, and you certainly want to try to win more than you lose, unless you're going for wins and loss streaks. If you're going for loss streaks, there's other folks that will talk about that. But for right now, just remember it's there. You don't need to win at all costs. Gold economy is huge here mid-game, so you hopefully have been saving a little bit of your gold in the early game where you can, because it's very important that you get in these rounds, that by the time you get to the middle of this round, say 15 to 17, that you're up to 50 gold, so that you are earning maximum interest, because remember, you were capped out at a 5 gold maximum interest. You get 1 gold for every 10 gold that you start the round with. So between interest and the 5 that you're going to guarantee yourself 10 income per round, 10 gold income, and you're going to use that to re-roll and push your levels. When you're re-rolling, be conservative about it. Make sure when you're re-rolling, you've got a plan in mind. Like, listen, here are the 4, 5, or 6 heroes that I'm looking for. If you're only looking for 1 or 2 heroes, don't spend a lot of gold on it, because if you're only looking for a few things, the odds of them coming up are reduced. But if you have a lot of heroes, a lot of things that you can improve, or a lot of heroes that you could add that would improve your mix, that's when it starts making sense to re-roll. So just be mindful of why you're re-rolling. What am I looking for? What am I hoping to have each time I hit that re-roll button? What am I hoping comes up? And then last, by the end of the level, you definitely want to be at level 7 by the end of mid-game, because in late game you'll be moving to 8, and that's where most of the throwdowns happen. They certainly will get to levels 9 and 10, especially as you move up in rank. The play goes up, and you'll find people lasting to the later rounds and higher. But make sure you do it smartly. Don't burn yourself. Try to keep an eye on your economy, and just use as much as the game's natural XP to kind of get you there. But again, just like in the early game, it may make sense for you to go to 7 or 8 even before here, especially if you're having a great economy. If you don't have to reroll, luck can really factor into this. If you're not having to reroll a lot and you're picking up the heroes that you need and getting the upgrades that you need to your heroes, a lot of times you can have some extra money. So push the level. It's definitely an advantage, and it also changes your ability to get those tier 4 and tier 5 units ahead of your opponents, and that's huge. Into the late game, we've already been working on this, but it's really getting down to crunch time to complete missing alliances or synergies. We've really got to button that up as the herd is starting to thin, and there may already be a player or 2 out by round 20, especially when you're newer and you're in the lower ranks and people are newer. But making sure that you're buttoning that up and you've got a clear direction, you know what you need to do, so that you're not left floundering, buying heroes that you don't need, re-rolling when you don't need to. Level 8 is going to be huge to have around level 25. That is a big creep round there. Top tier items start coming in. You may have found yourself there naturally, but if you are not there at level 8, you're definitely going to have to spend gold to get there. You won't earn enough natural XP through the game to get there without spending money, but definitely to be a contender. That's where a lot of the power spikes start happening. So there's going to be a lot of players being eliminated between rounds 25 and 35. Gauge where you're standing with the game. Have you been winning? Have you been losing? Has it been a mix? And depending on where your life total is, if you're getting low on HP, you may need to burn that gold to try to power up your board. Should you be re-rolling, like re-rolling, even though you may only have a few things to upgrade? Should you be pushing from levels 8 to 9 at this point? Is it or I'm in a good enough place where I can sit on that gold piece interest train, and even though I may be winning and losing, I'm not losing by much, so that I can just take that interest gold plus the 5 and continue to do what I'm going to do. And usually if you're in a good place, you can let the interest roll, and it can be some kind of mix that's in there. It's like, listen, I may be able to just roll away 10 gold, get myself 5 re-rolls to try to level up a few of these key heroes that could make me stronger. So it can be, it really coming down to crunch time. And I guess what I mean by this is, make sure you don't get knocked out of the game and have 50 gold sitting on you. You can't take it with you to the next game. So when you start getting down to where you think you've got one loss, where one loss will knock you out, like if you've been losing an average of 12 life and you're down to 15 life, you're like, I'm in that realm, it's time to spend that gold. And should I spend it on re-rolling or leveling? So don't die with a bunch of gold sitting on yourself. Position, while it's important in the other game, I haven't talked about it much, and I'll probably look to do a quick video on positioning, so at least you understand how it works. But for right now, there are other YouTubers that have some positioning videos out there for you. But in general, as the game starts to progress and players start to drop a general posture, like, hey, I find that most of the opponent's boards are positioned this way. Take a general posture that hits as many as possible. If they're really, for example, though, if they're a very strong assassin players, even just one really strong assassin player, you may find yourself having to corner up by putting all your units in the corner so the assassins can't jump in and get at your weaker units. As the game starts to wind down here, which is generally between probably around 25, 30 is when there's usually only 2 or 3 players left. By, definitely by 35, there's usually only a couple players left. That you're making sure you're moving yourself from round to round. You generally won't face the same opponent twice in a row, that is. Making sure that you're understanding, listen, hey, they don't have assassins, or they've got a ton of AoE or area damage. I need to spread my units out so they don't get nuked. Make sure you're paying more attention to that, because in the late rounds, it can make the difference between winning and losing. Sometimes it's like, I just keep getting beat, and sometimes it's your positioning. A lot of these things will just, you're going to learn with experience or watching high-end streamers. I find myself watching a lot of big boss streamers on Twitch to get a lot of good tips, and just watching what they're doing, and especially if you can find a good one that will talk about their thought processes as they're moving things around. And the last thing is, items are very critical here, especially at rounds 20 and 30 and 35. This is when you start getting access to tier 4 and tier 5 items. Tier 5 items can be absolutely game changing. They're so powerful. So making sure that when you're choosing those items, you're getting them into the hands of the right hero. And I won't go into too much of detail here, but to know that these can be big shifts. You can be winning just fine through round 25, and then all of a sudden your opponent gets an item that just lets one of their heroes just destroy and get their ability off multiple times, or takes their damage up through the roof. So knowing that at 25, 30, and 35, there's going to be generally there's going to be a lot of power spikes due to items, and hopefully it's yours. Well, I hope everyone's enjoyed the video and learned a little something along the way. Please like and subscribe to the channel, as we're new and could really use your support. Also, please leave comments in the videos, and I'll be looking at them, and I'll take them into account when I do future projects. And with that, farewell everyone, and good gaming.